Fantastic, ladies. And what a great message. Thank you, Claire and Sydney, for singing for us and leading us, doing a wonderful job. We appreciate it so much. A Brazilian folk tale about the little cow, as told by Richard Paul Evans in his book, The Walk. It seems there was a master and his servant that were traveling along through the countryside, and they came across this poor, dilapidated shanty. And the master told his servant, "Go down there and see if you can get us some food." And so the servant went, and a farmer, poor farmer, and his wife and 7 children, all in rags, came to the door. And the servant asked for food, and the farmer said, "Well, we have very little, but we'll share what we have." And he came back with a piece of cheese and a crust of bread. The farmer then said, "We do have very little, but we have one thing going for us. We have a little cow. And that little cow provides us with milk and with cheese to eat, or sometimes to sell in the market. And so with that little cow, we make it." And so the servant went back up the hill and told his master, took the cheese and the crust of bread, and told the master what he had found. The master said, "Now I want you to do one other thing. I want you to go back down there. I want you to get their little cow and bring it here." The servant reluctantly obeyed, and he went and he got the little cow. The master said, "I want you to do one other thing. I want you to take that little cow up on that yonder cliff and push it off." And the servant reluctantly agreed. And then the master and the servant went on their way. And years passed. The servant always felt bad about what happened to the farmer, about pushing the cow off the cliff. And finally he could stand it no more, and so he went back to apologize. But where the poor shanty had stood, there was now this beautiful villa. And so the servant went and knocked on the door, and this well-dressed man came to the door. And the servant asked, "Years and years and years ago, I came to this spot. There was this poor shanty here, a poor farmer and his wife and 7 children. And the man said, "Oh, that's my family. We've lived here for generations. We've lived here for years." And the servant said, I don't understand. I came here to apologize." And here's what the farmer said. The farmer said, "We thought our cow wandered off and fell off the cliff. And we thought we were ruined. But we decided at that point that we had to do whatever we could to survive. And what we discovered in that moment was we had greater abilities and skills and talents than we ever knew we had. We ended up being grateful that our cow wandered off. And God has blessed us immensely. I have this villa. All 7 of my children have villas and estates. And we never would have had that had we always been dependent on that little cow." And then the farmer said, "We decided that we can be victims of circumstances, or we can be masters of our own fate, but we cannot be both." So here's the challenge out of that story. We want to challenge you, Florence Church, to step up and own Vision 2022 and finish the work. If you're visiting with us today, several years ago, we adopted an ambitious vision plan for this church. We've been in this vision plan for several years now. It is Vision 2022. We've got 5 years to go, and we've got work to do. And we've got to decide, church, if we're going to be victims of circumstances or masters of our own fate, if we're going to own this vision and finish it. And we want to challenge you to finish the job, to finish what you started. Now, how do we do that? Finishing always is about willingness. In the scripture that David read for us, 2 Corinthians 8, verse 11, "Now finish the work," Paul says, so that your eager willingness to do it may be matched by your completion of it, according to your means. Verse 12, for if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what he does not have. You see, finishing is all about willingness. Folks, it's all about heart. It's all about desire. It's all about gumption. You know what gumption is? Look it up. Gumption is spirited initiative. Willingness means that every person in this place goes to God and says, God, here I am, use me. We go to God and say, we know that you're the potter and we're the clay. Mold us and shape us after your will. We take a hymnal and we sing, wherever he leads, I'll go. How many of us love that hymn and we put the book back in the rack and we forget those words? Willingness means that we're willing to say to God, a little scary, isn't it? Just admit it. Are you willing to say to God today, as Florence Church, wherever you lead, I'll go? Are we willing to get out of our comfort zones and take some risk? 2008, the Beijing Olympics. You recall that Michael Phelps, was going for an unprecedented 8 gold medals. He'd already won 7. He needed the gold in the 4x100 meter freestyle relay to accomplish this feat of 8 gold medals. And going into the last leg of that relay, it did not look good for the Americans. A swimmer by the name of Jason Lezak dove into the pool. When he dove into the pool, he was already a body length behind the Frenchman. And when they made the turn, he was still a body length behind the Frenchman, and no one gave him a chance, and no one gave the Americans a chance. Do you remember what happened? There was one person, and by the way, Jason Lezak was the oldest member of the U.S. swim team. He was 32 years old. There was one person that day that believed he could win, that willed to win, and his name was Jason Lezak, and he won by a fingertip. And Michael Phelps had his 8 gold medals. Folks, this vision that we're going to be talking about the entire month is all about this right here. Do we have the heart, the desire, under God, to finish the work? Secondly, finishing the work is about accomplishing some goals. If you were to read Vision 2022, there are some specific goals in there that we want to accomplish. We talked about one of them last week. What is it? It's a test. To take the gospel to every person. Some of you are sitting there saying, we can't do that, preacher. Well, the only problem I have with you saying that to me is Jesus told us to do it. It's our Great Commission mandate. Go into all the world, preach the gospel. And we talked last week about conversion growth, taking the gospel to people who do not have a personal relationship with Christ, and maybe in some cases do not want one. Are we willing to get up in the morning and pray, Lord, will you put somebody in my path today and let me share the gospel with him or her? Will you make that your prayer? That's our first goal. Another goal you'll find in Vision 2022 is to finish paying for the Christian Growth Center. If you're not familiar, we've been in this wonderful building out here. We call the Christian Growth Center for 9 years. The bottom floor is our nursery and our preschool and our children's area. We have a beautiful welcome center. The top floor, we have the Ark for our children, where Tanya and our children are this morning. And then we have this wonderful youth space called the Loft. We are so blessed to have that facility. To date, we owe $1,394,263.65 on that building. If any of you were asleep, let me say it again. $1,394,263.65. We pay on that building every month $19,980. How would you like to have that for your house payment? $19,980 this church pays every month and has for the last 9 years. Of our last payment, our most recent payment, $15,730.43 went to principal. That means that $4,249.57 was interest paid to the bank. Now, lest some of you think those are staggering numbers, let me share with you that 9 years ago, when we entered that building, we owed $3.7 million. This church has done remarkably well. You are the greatest of givers. But how do we pay for these buildings? Through tithes and offerings. We believe that's right here. We make no apologies about preaching it. We ask everyone to be a tither, and if you're not a tither, we ask you to give, to start somewhere, and pray that God will lead you to be a tither. 10% of all that we make given to God through the local church is our tithe. And then we ask you to give over and above that to Light Shine Forward. Over and above your tithes, over and above your regular gifts. Some of you know that since 1986, this church has done capital campaigns every 3 years, and it's through those capital campaigns that we paid for this sanctuary, the LEC that we enjoy at First Light, and the Christian Growth Center. We're in our 4th Light Shine campaign. We're finishing up the first year of the 4th campaign. And that's how we have paid for these buildings. God has blessed us, enabled us to make our payments as well as pay extra on the principal. And we challenge you to finish the job. Let me also add here before I go on, some of you do not know this, of all the money given to Light Shine, we tithe that money. We take 10% of every Light Shine dollar and use that money to build churches around the world. We've done that for years here. We've got these huge payments, but we tithe that money and use it to build churches around the world. Recently, we sent 17 of you to Montana to build the Big Sky Fellowship. We were able to send you out there. We sent $2,000 with you for building supplies, and that money comes from the 10% for Building Churches Fund. We tithe 10% of the Light Shine funds. Money's given. And so finish the work is our challenge. To finish sharing the gospel with every person, and in this case, to finish paying for that building. So finishing is all about willingness. Finishing is all about accomplishing some goals. And thirdly, finishing is all about beginning again. What happens when a person comes to Christ? What happens? We talked about this last week. What happens if you take these 3 words on the front of your bulletin and a person has an experience, they somehow connect to our church, they discover Christ, what happens? Our hope is it starts all over again and they share Christ with somebody else. What happens in your Sunday school class? Well, we know what happens in most of them. You love your class, don't you? And we're glad you love your class. But you do realize, don't you, that every Sunday school class in this church ought to be trying to start another class. Every mission group in this church ought to be trying to start another mission group. Because the gospel is not just for us. We finish something to begin again. We work until Jesus comes back. Listen, folks, if we finish, if we quit, we're dead. You want to be dead? If we finish, if that's our goal, just to finish, if we quit working, we'll be stagnant and stale and dead. So we share the gospel. A convert hopefully makes another convert. What happens when we finish paying for this building? Let me share with you, I didn't make this up. This is in our Vision 2022 plan. When we finish paying for this building, we're going to hire an architect and develop a master plan. Again, there's actually a master plan in the lobby this morning. Tommy put it out there for us. Appreciate him doing that. But we're going to hire an architect and develop a master plan for all of our properties. We hope to build a brand new youth facility dedicated just to our youth, David. And when that happens, then the lot becomes a total, complete children's facility. Wouldn't that be great if we got to that point? That's in our vision plan. We want to have a conference room that's high-tech, the latest in technology, where we can do meetings and training of all kinds. The vision plan also calls for us to renovate our classroom building, our oldest building. It calls for us to have a bigger stage out there, Scott, in the LEC, and storage in the LEC. And the vision plan calls for us to update the parlor, update the LEC dining room, and to purchase additional properties as God opens those doors for us. And so when we finish, it's just a beginning. That's the way we've always worked. And we'll be working till Jesus comes back. Remember the little cow? Let me go back to that story for just a minute. There's an awful lot of naysayers today about the church. There's an awful lot of people out there that say the church has had its best days. There's an awful lot of people out there that want to say, people are so apathetic today. They don't really care. They're not really interested. An awful lot of people out there today that want to talk about secularism and materialism. Think about the little cow. We can be victims of circumstance or masters of our own fate. And guess who decides that? Every person in this place this morning. We can be victims of circumstance or masters of our own fate, but we cannot be both. And we challenge you to step up, to step out, and to own Vision 2022, and to finish the job. We're going to sing together this morning, 519, Jesus is Lord of All. This is a great hymn, a great song. We invite you to come in profession of your faith. We invite you to come and join this church. We invite you to come and recommit your life. Maybe you want to come and pray. God is in this place. He's speaking to our hearts. And we invite you to come as God leads. 519, will you take a hymnal? Will you stand? Will you sing? And will you come as we sing together? Jesus is Lord of all.